Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Agency Life. I have a very long friend. I'm not going to say old because you're not old, Perry. You're very, very young. But Perry and I have known each other for maybe 5 or 6 years now. I still remember the first phone call. From Tel Aviv, Penguin Strategies, we have Perry on our show today. Welcome.
Excited, happy to be here.
Finally, with a beautiful yellow background. If you're not watching this on YouTube, check it out. If you're just listening, he's got a fantastic office with all the placements behind him as well. Perry, your name is very synonymous in the HubSpot community. I think people know about Penguin Strategies. You've been used as examples. But can you tell everyone, how did you end up in this crazy roller coaster world of agency life?
I wish I had a really exciting story. It's actually a kind of a mistake. I spent about 20 plus years. I guess you didn't want to say I was old, but I'm gonna give it away. I spent about 20 plus years in B2B tech, working for a lot of different technology companies in every role you can imagine, from coding, development, product management, and then the final few years that I was at my last job, I was a head of business development and sales. And then I spent a couple of years doing consulting and trying to build my own tech startup. Through a couple of failures, I paid the bills by doing consulting, and then I saw that the consulting business was kind of growing. And I was, at the time, this is back when this early days of LinkedIn, I was very successful in helping companies figure out how to use LinkedIn to do sales, do a little bit of marketing. And then I got introduced to this thing called content marketing. My co-founder was big into content marketing, and she was telling me about how they put this stuff up on their website and people come in and leave their name and number. It was unbelievable stuff, but at the time it was really foreign to me. And I said, you know what, you should bring that stuff to the consulting companies the companies I'm working with. They probably need it. And it clicked, and I just realized that there's a lot of need, at least in the niche that I was focused on, which is tech. And Penguin, we actually were planning to do it for a few months until we found jobs. Turned into a business. In 2014, we put out our shingle. Penguin Strategy was born. 6.5 years later, we're still here.
Still rocking and rolling. Where did the name come from?
Again, I wish I had a better story, but the story is that when we decided to launch the company, I was doing consulting under a different name, which wasn't a very good marketing name. I had called the company iMobility Solutions, and when she read it, it was immobility, right? So it didn't sound like a good name so we said, okay, I don't want to spend hours, years looking for a name. We have 24 hours to come up with a name, and then we decided to name it after an animal. We came up with 2 animals, penguin and dolphin. Penguin had a better URL available.
Wow.
We've spun many stories around where the penguin comes from, but that's the real one.
That is great. And yeah, I love your pricing page. You've got all different packages named after different penguins as well. You've got creative with the amount. I've learned about the different penguins from your pricing page.
I have a ton of pictures that people send me from all over the world. Every time they see a penguin, I get a picture.
It's great, isn't it? Yeah, it's like it didn't start that way, but it's ended up that people are now synonymous. That's actually true. Every time I've seen a picture, I do think of you. I think of a penguin. Good animal. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not a shark. It's not somebody. It's not a scary one. They're friendly. They're very good male role models, actually, because they're the ones who raise the kids, which is quite interesting. Watched a few penguin documentaries in my time. Perry, can you explain, because I have had this conversation because I've worked with you in the past, full disclaimer everyone, I've worked with you in the past, and because of the conversations that we've had with various members of your team, something that was unlocked for me that nobody really knows is about why there's so many tech cybersecurity companies. Why is Israel, especially Tel Aviv, the absolute hotbed for innovation, technology, and the whole world right now?
It really stems from the same reason that Israel's considered to have one of the best militaries or armies in the world. It's kind of because we have to, right?
Yeah.
Having, living in a tough neighborhood has kind of breeded that. Now, what are we, 73, 70 years later, the way the world is today, it's very, the front, the crime, the front is not just military the way we're used to it, which is tanks and planes. It's also cyber and technology. And so it's been one of the best incubators, and I think in the US they have this as well, but one of the best incubators for technology is the military, is the Army, and they have some of the best units, cyber units in the world. Very well known as the 8200 units that people talk about. There's other ones that either we don't know about or nobody talks about, but there's a lot of people coming out of them. So the know-how is being used to generate a lot of really incredible companies that come out of it. So it's either data-oriented, cyber, but people, so there's a lot of talk around those types of companies. But interesting, there's you name a sector, and there's great technology coming out of Tel Aviv. If you talk about even finance, fintech, if you go to the US and you look at some of the paradigms that have been switched over the last 10 years with how lending is happening, there's 4 or 5 Tel Aviv startups that people don't realize they're Tel Aviv startups that are at the forefront. If you take insurance, why would Israel be the forefront of insurance? And you think about it, and one of the top companies in the world is Lemonade. So I can go on, video, look at Powtoons. So, all these companies, Waze, which, people use every day, was originally an Israeli company and then bought by Google. I can go on, but I know that we only have a limited amount of time. So we
could list it. This podcast became 4,000 tech startups in Israel, and the people are going, what happened there? And I think it's point, because I didn't know this until I had been speaking to Shohem on your team. There's conscription is still going on. 18 years of age, people have to go into the military. Is it just men or is it women as well? Is it right now?
Yeah. No, we have women fighter pilots. It's men and women, and it's mandatory on both sides.
Yeah, so they're going in and they're going into the military. There's this incredible training and learning. Some people, I would imagine, stay on, right? If they want to, they can go and pursue a military career. But when they come out, they've just had some of, incredible education in your country. Then compound that with this high-end technology, like basically incubator infusion, like the Matrix downloading into their heads, and they come out and they want to start businesses. They've got ideas and everyone's connecting together. It's not like they're coming out into the wilderness. They're coming out with other people who've been from other areas. So I don't think anyone, when I tell the story to people, they go, oh, that's right, because nobody really knows, because they haven't lived there. So with your portfolio of clients, like, talk to us about the evolution of when you came out of that consulting and you pulled a name out of a zoo basically, and you sat down. What was the evolution of when you went out to work with clients and where you are now, the types of people you work with?
So we first, we're analyzing, first of all, looking at these types of companies and saying, we're building a business, a service for these types of companies, and let's think, what are they? It's every service that we provide, and we build it to be the best for this niche, and we kind of rolled them out over the years based on what they need. So the first thing we felt they needed is, so a lot of these tech startups, like you said, like you mentioned, they come out of the Army, where they're trained and they're very entrepreneurial, which is different than many other militaries. Is that there's a hierarchy and there's a command, but we're taught to ask a lot of questions and not just be obedient, and that really creates creative ideas. But one thing that a lot of these founders are missing, because they're so technologically minded, and they believe in they believe that build it and they will come. We know that today it's not enough. So even though you may have the best piece of technology since the best thing since sliced bread, as they say, but if you don't market it properly, that's all it'll be. It'll be a great piece of technology that nobody uses. And so what was especially missing 5 or 6 years ago when we started, and there's been a change over the years, was that that need is there. We had to educate the market that there's a need for marketing. It's not just about being able to a language barrier, which originally we thought was a big piece of it because they're speaking, Hebrew, and marketing needs to be in English. That's one, but it was really more of a, crossing the bridge from technical to marketing speak, which we found was more complicated than even we envisioned, because a lot of our customers are not only selling us very complex technology, but they're actually selling it to a complex technological persona. So it's not just, it's not fluff, creating technically to marketing fluff. It's creating tech to tech, but speaking to the pains of that. So there's a lot of levels of complexity, and it's a tough nut to crack. But the fact that that we've cracked it, and specifically for this niche, has been something that's been a very unique selling point for us.
Yeah, that has been that. I always remember that they're not skimmers. So if you think of B2C, you can put out a funny little animation video and have skim. You can even have a couple of kind of hiccups in there, as in, not quite true, but enough. That's not going to fly from a high-end technical product to the high-end technical reader. A typo, I can imagine, can cause distrust in the whole product. Could they go, if they're making typing mistakes, is their product really real? That's the level of detail we're looking at potentially in that reader.
Yeah, absolutely. It's also about the terminology. We can all say AWS or cloud, but there's such deep terminology within each one of these technologies, and they're solving such niche problems that me and you may never even have heard of these problems.
Right. Yeah.
But these people that are feeling the pain of these problems, these because we hear cyber, we think about hacking, but there's so many small things that need to be protected, and this is what this guy's job is, to protect this part of the network. And if you don't get the lingo right, then they just think, okay, that guy might be smart, but he doesn't get my problem.
Got it. Yeah. And how did you solve that problem of finding technical writers, and also can you explain how how you built the agency structure wise? Do you use pods, or is it teams, or?
Good question. The second one, we're in transition as we speak. As I think I've been in transition since the company started, so
That's the game, isn't it?
It's always fun and games. There's no, we're still trying to solve that problem on the writing side. It's something that is continuously being improved upon. But what we found is, I don't have an agency background, so I can't say, my previous agency, we did it this way. I've heard of, I speak to agency owners all the time.
All the time.
Learn a lot, and I think that there's no one fit. And I love that HubSpot, for example, tries to help a lot, with the way they do it. But you have to make sure that you look at it from the right angle and take what fits for you, and not everything is a good fit for everybody. And with regards to content, the thing that we invested heavily in, and we continue to, is the seniority of our staff. It's really important that you get the right people in front of them. So, if a few years ago, I thought I just have to hire really great writers. You can't. I would have to hire, if I have 30 customers at the time, I would have had to have at least 20 different writers, because it's so specific.
Yeah.
What I did realize the way we could fix that is, because we still needed to use some outsource of writing, is we needed to get the content strategy done properly. And that's really where we've been successful, in that we bring in those senior strategists, that they themselves have been CMOs of companies like the ones that we're working with. And so that was our challenge over the years, is how do we get those people to join us? Because Israel is different than one thing, because when I speak to my US colleagues, especially, and also in Europe, working for an agency is actually a positive thing. In Israel, it's not.
Mm-hmm.
At least it's another thing we've been able to improve upon, is that agencies were not looked at as a great place to work, because agencies here and it's changing, but historically, and I'm sure this is going on in other countries as well, it's a learning ground.
Right.
So it's a place that junior people go to get taken advantage of, but also to get the advantage of learning. And that's something that we had to take a deep look at it. How do we fix? And I think we've been doing a great job.
Excellent. Yeah, that is interesting. I guess it's not, well, in a land of you can be your own entrepreneur. You've come out of the military, you've got this great background. There's probably a lot of prestige with setting up your own business. Why would you go and work for somebody else? And then there's probably all those amazing tech companies that are vying for those people. And probably some prestige, I would imagine, around. Is that the culture of, you know, I left the military and I got this type of job?
No, for sure. And it's across the board. I mean, in some cultures, it's like, is your son a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant? Here,
Right.
it's, you know, which startup are you working with?
Right.
What's their last round of funding? How much runway do they have? Which
Yeah.
VC? I mean, these are things that are people talk about it. And you know, I
Yeah.
talked to some of my friends that I grew up with. I grew up in Canada. They're like, they don't know what I'm talking about. It's it's a
Yeah.
different mindset.
Yeah.
But it's a similar. I mean, it's a Silicon Valley or type mindset, which is which is pretty much what it is here. It's not like everybody in Israel works in tech, but you know there's quite a big community here.
More or less. Yeah. You mentioned you were in Canada for how long, and how did you go from there, and how has that influenced then the fact that you can come back to Tel Aviv and not be part of the main pack? You stood out. Do you think that was a big sort of difference for you?
Look, it definitely is an advantage. I grew up. I moved to Israel with my family when I was 16.
Yeah.
So I had a strong. Yeah,
Wow.
therefore my
Yeah.
English has been maintained. It's not as good as it could have been if I would have completed my education, obviously. But obviously I went to here. I went to university here. But it's definitely an advantage as I went through. You know, I remember my first job as a developer. I walked a few weeks after I was working my first job. I barely had 3 weeks of experience of doing nothing yet. I mean, writing a few lines of code. One of my managers actually sent me to a customer, and I asked him, like, well, I don't know anything yet. He says, yeah, but you speak English. So,
Ta-da! Off you go.
so I learned a lot really quick by being always the guy that they sent out. But so that was definitely a good advantage. And I was always very curious. So I kind of always was interested in what other departments were doing. And that's kind of why I kept moving from I spent 3 or 4 years in coding, and then I moved into product management. I actually spent 4 years in New York with a startup, being the in between the customer and the development team in Tel Aviv. So I definitely took advantage of the areas that I could.
Yeah, and there seems to be this massive, I know it's definitely an Irish thing as well. Like, we travel the world, we go around the world, but the amount of people that come home, amount of people that are home now that I'm sure would never have thought of going home, but are home. Is that a very typical thing? Because I do meet a lot of Israeli people who have lived in other countries, but then they're coming, this draw, this kind of, I want to come home.
Yeah, no, it's there's a big there's big communities in pretty much every center you can imagine.
Yeah.
Whether it's New York, Silicon Valley, LA, London, I'm sure in Ireland as well. And you constantly, I actually just met the father of one of my daughter's friends. They came back from Hong Kong, not because of the situation, actually just happened to be about 6 months
Mm-hmm.
ago, but they'd been there for like 10 years and decided to, like you said, come home. It wasn't, just nothing else but
It's so weird, isn't it?
home.
Yeah.
Home is home.
Home's home. I know. Same for me. When I was down in Australia, and within a couple of weeks, I was like, I'm never leaving. And then 12 years later, this pull, it's like, you can't even explain it to people. It's like
Yeah.
this, it's like a big magnet. It just pulls you home. Do you know? And I was just speaking to someone in Australia this morning, a bit part of the work that I do, work internationally, and just hearing the Aussie accent, it was like another dream. I was like, I had to remind myself, God, I used to live there like for 7 years ago. It was
Yeah.
like, it's that you probably do that because your business is across the pond as well, right? So you are over in America as well.
Yeah. So again, by accident, when we put out our shingle in January of 2014, we started doing some great work, I think, and 6 or 7 months later, I got a call from a contact from my previous world, and they just taken on a CMO job in Silicon Valley, and I was telling them what we were doing, and they said, you guys should come do your thing for us. I was like, how is that even possible? There's a 10-hour difference. And he says, yeah, if you're doing your job properly, what's the difference? And so I said, okay. And we, first American customer, and with there's an expression in Hebrew, I don't know what it does, with the food comes the drive, or I don't know what it's like,
Okay, the hunger.
the appetite,
The appetite.
right?
Okay, got it.
So so then we started, things started to grow there, and then we had only about a year later we had a first employee in the US, and then about a year after that we actually opened up a subsidiary in the US. And I would say today it's maybe 50-50 from our business perspective. We've got a big customer base in the US as well, so we're considered I guess from that perspective, both an American and an Israeli agency. And I think it's been really exciting.
How many people in the agency total now? And give us the breakdown between Tel Aviv and America.
I think we're about 35. Obviously we were a bit more a couple months ago, but I think we're about 35 right now, and 7 or 8 of them are 8 in the US, and the rest in the Tel Aviv. We're not in Tel Aviv, but we're just outside Tel Aviv,